So it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. Coming to you again with kind of a spurious enough link, but one that was made by Di Marzio in the Italian press, that Aston Villa have been linked to Federico Gatti. And he's an interesting defender, and I think Aston Villa will be active in the central defensive market this year. So I wanted to come on and talk about the type of defender he is. Some of you guys like these scouting series. Some of you guys prefer more concrete information, you know, whether they're likely to sign or just about to sign. But this is something that helps me get through the off season. It's something I like doing, as regular watchers of the show will know, and that is trying to scout players and trying to watching players, because I love watching football. Federico Gatti is somebody who's really, really interesting. Very interesting career arc. Played a lot of amateur football. Was basically playing amateur football up until I think it was the start of the 2020-2021 season. And then he actually only signed for a Serie C team in Pro Patria. Played with them only for one season, and then was signed by a Serie B team, Frosinone, straight away. He was signed for a meager fee. I think it was something like $250,000. And midway through that season, he was signed by Juventus. They were actually close to. He was close to moving to Torino first. Then Juventus got a sniff of it and actually signed him to a 4.5 year deal, should I say, for I think it was €7.5 million. And they loaned him back. I think Juventus signed him mid-season in the January transfer window and loaned him back to Frosinone for that season. Then the next season, he played with Juventus, played 18 games in the league, played in cup games, and played in Europa League and Champions League as well that season. He's been more or less a mainstay within the Juventus side since. But the biggest thing for Gatti is he was kind of a late bloomer into professional football. You know, he started his professional football career at 22 years of age, and that was in Serie C. And he's had a meteoric rise since, even getting called up to the Italian national team in 2022. His first season, he'd only been in Serie, playing at Serie B level and Serie A level for, I think it was less than 18 months at that time. He was called up to the Italian national team and he's 6 caps. So he's had a real meteoric rise. And he's a right-footed centre-half, 6'3", gets around the field, not the quickest, doesn't have the greatest recovery speed, but his defensive positioning is incredible. And you know what I'll say about him? You know what I'll kind of give my synopsis of him early is very, very statistically very, very similar to Ezri Konsa. And we know Unai Emery loves Ezri Konsa, loves him in multiple positions. Gatti can play right back, but he's a centre half if he comes into this team. Or comes into this side, and he's definitely a right-sided centre-half as well. But a nice, imposing type of player. As I say, 6'3", nice height to him. Something that we do kind of lack in the defensive areas. And one thing about him is, passes up to about 30 yards, he's extremely safe and solid with regards to us. He's not going to be somebody who's going to rake the ball left or right, a la Pau Torres. But what he's going to do is, if he passes a ball within that 25 meter range, it's going to be on the money, because his pass accuracy and his range of passing in that intermediate range, short to intermediate range, is quite impressive. I think he's about a 45 or 95% pass completion rate. We'll see when I bring up my stat sheet in a moment, with just from memory. So he's somebody that's had, as I said, the big thing to know with this guy is a meteoric rise. And why, I hear you say, would he be looking to leave Juventus? Well, rumor has it that he's on what me and you and the man in the street is not a meager wage. He's on roughly about 45,000 per week, and he's looking for Juventus to pay him. So when I talk about this link as being potentially spurious, it's rumored that he's looking for about 3 million per year, 3 million euros per year, which comes in, I think, around 60 or 65 million It's 60 or 65,000 per week. So he's looking for a pay increase, which, you know what, if you can get a centre half with Italian experience, with Italian national team experience for that, I think that is huge. That would be huge for Aston Villa. Now, I've just done very, very quick maths in my head. 3 million, I think, is somewhere in and around that. But don't quote me on it. So, two things to think about this one before we look into the stat sheet. Is this agent-led looking for another payday at Juventus? Potentially. Most likely, to be honest. But if it's not, and the reason I say if it's not is before the rumblings of this, and even in January of last year, it was rumoured that other Premier League teams were looking at Gatti, that he wanted to move. He wanted to I suppose spread his wings from Serie A to be noticed more in the Italian setup, and that potential was there. So just wanted to be very transparent on that. These rumors come off the back of Gatti wanting an increased wage or to re-up his contract. He's still on that contract that he signed for he's still on a contract that he signed in 2023, I think it is, a 4.5 deal in 2023 with Juventus after he came back from his loans with Frosinone, and he's looking to have that re-upped based on his usage, I suppose, number one, and second of all, international caps, blah blah blah, all that. So if the rumoured amount of wages he's looking for is the rumoured amount of wages, I think it's a no-brainer. But once again, you take everything with a pinch of salt. Now, I know an awful lot of people will say, well, we don't want to sign somebody who's looking to have his contract renegotiated. This guy is coming in, he's nearly 27 years of age. I can completely understand him not wanting to be on a low-ball contract and to be paid what he's worth. His career is not infinite. And as I say, he really started making money when he signed that deal in 2023. So more, every man deserves to be paid what he's worth, or what he feels he's worth. And for Federico Gatti, you know, his meteoric rise would lead him, I suppose, rightly or wrongly, and his agent to believe that he should be paid more than what he's on at the moment. So parking all that aside, let's look at the type of player that he is. Let me bring up my stat sheet and make it easier. So, Federico Gatti. So, as I say, 6'3", he's a right-footed defender. He'll be 27 very soon. 27 this month, the 24th of this month. Looking at his heat map there, you can see it's very interesting, the amount of ground that he covers. But he obviously has that do not cross line in attack. And I think that's a lot of this is to do with the amount of ball dominance that Juventus would have had in the league. And there, you know, in Serie A, there would be, albeit that last year wasn't the year that they wanted, I suppose. They still would have been a ball dominant team. They would have been a team that came to play football and would have fancied themselves. Obviously, look, they're the old lady of Turin. They're steeped in Serie A. They've basically owned Serie A for the last decade and a half, and Federico Gatti has been a part of that. He's you know, been a part, I suppose, of that, albeit he hasn't won a Serie A title with them. He won the Coppa Italia in 2023, 2024, but he hasn't won a Serie A title. So what are we looking at with regards to him? I said that he was very similar in a lot of areas to Ezri Konsa. And when you look at him from a spider graph, or a radial graph, should I say, over here on that right hand side, you can see Ezri Konsa there in the pink is quite similar to him in an awful lot of ways. You know, he doesn't like to rush into tackles. He's a very measured tackler. You can see here, look, when you look at the left hand side there and you look at the defensive stats, you'll notice some of them look like they're low. And their quantities, the quantities of those then will have an effect here in this as well. So like if he doesn't have as many tackles as another player, a lot of those other statistics are going to be lower. Like if you don't, like if he had 6 tackles per 90, he'd have more tackles 1 per 90, he'd have more tackles in the defensive third, and so on and so forth. So a lot of those would be inflated just based on the amount of defensive work that he's been tasked with doing. Obviously, Juventus being a ball-dominant team and a team that you're going to go into Serie A and be expecting them to have the ball more and not be doing as much defensive work, what we need to look in here in the nuance is what does he actually do and how well does he do it? So when we look at his tackles per 90, he tackles at 1.05 tackles per 90, which is 1 tackle per 90 essentially. And that's going to ground and tackling a player. But he wins 0.81 tackles per game. So when you look at that, like 80% of ground duels when he goes to ground, give or take, he wins. Incredible number, brilliant number. So statistics will tell you what you want to see from them, but you have to look into the nuance. I've always said that. You have to watch him when he plays football as well, and this correlates through as well. Very, very solid defender from that point of view. Looking at his blocked, shots blocked, passes blocked, all that kind of stuff there leads you to, he's not afraid to throw his body on the line. From the point of view of how many times he blocks the ball, he's actually blocked it more times than any of the players we have in the team at the moment. So he's going to fit in from a Premier League point of view, because I think that's something that our defenders didn't do an awful lot last year, whether it was something they were tasked with doing. And I know from looking at last season's statistics, the season before, that Tyrone Mings' was less, but then again, from seasons previously, should I say, Tyrone Mings didn't dive into tackles as much, but then obviously he's coming back from injury, and he was the guy that was usually tasked with putting his body on the line. So we will obviously give him a pass for that. So it'd be nice to have that. Uses his big frame, 6'3", gets in the way of things. Also, what I want to highlight here is his ball recovery. So while I mentioned he's not lightning quick and his recovery pace is a small, it's noticeably not as fast as an Ezri Konsa or a Tyrone Mings. But when he recovers, like, he can get to the ball, he can get wide. His lateral running is actually an awful lot better because his positioning is extremely good. So he's very good at reading the game. He's got very good Italian defensive nose from a positioning point of view. And that's allowed him to rise meteorically through the league, Serie C, Serie B, Serie A, Champions League, onto the Italy national team. It's what he does in the top 6 inches is very, very, very evident when you watch him play the game of football. He has had some concentration lapses. I think that's, once again, will come with the relative lack of experience that a 26, nearly 27-year-old late bloomer will have had. But on the main, this guy is absolutely, he's born in the defensive mold of a defender. His aerial duels are an interesting one here. I've only watched games from him in 2024, 2025, since this broke last night. And what I will say is that it's not that he's bad in the air. When you look at here, you see aerial duel percentage, 58.2%. He's not good enough. We need somebody who wins 90% of their aerial duels. Those guys are like hen's teeth, number one. But secondly, I think that this guy it's more so that he isn't tasked or he doesn't engage an awful lot in the air. But when you look statistically, and I haven't watched any of the games, when he played in Serie B with Frosinone, he had an incredible amount of aerial work to do, and he dealt with it at a 68, I think it was 68 or 69% aerial duel percentage win rate. So I'm loath to say that this guy can't work in the air, because when I watch him, he's very well able to win a header in the air. There's no problem there. He's scored goals. I don't know how many of those goals are headers, so I will admit that I can't correlate between those. But on the tape, it's not that he's bad in the air. It's just that he looks like he doesn't tend to challenge in the air as much. He tends to be somebody who stays low, stays on the ground, mops things up. That can be seen as well with his ball recoveries. Also, why would he do that? Because he's really good at passing the ball. And that's another reason. Stylistically, that's why he's like Ezri Konsa. That's why statistics come out like Ezri Konsa's. Konsa doesn't challenge much in the air. He allows that ball. He's that second ball getter, that breaking ball getter, and somebody who will play between the sideline and the penalty spot, just like you can see that for Federico Gatti's heat map is like here. So that's really interesting. His passing range is very decent, up to about 25-30 meters. He's very adept at that. Look, you can see him there, 94.5% completion rate from 60.35 pass attempts. So this guy ain't afraid to pass the ball. He isn't afraid to have decent workload. And when he does it, he's a safe passer of the ball. And I'm say safe because he doesn't tend to stray outside that 20-yard pass. He's not going to be raking the ball over players' heads like a Mings does, or specifically like a Pau Torres does. But this guy will get it into your Yuri Tielemans' feet very safely, very solidly, and allow our midfielders to move that ball. which I think is something that that Unai Emery would will adore, to be honest with you, because it would speed up our level of play. Yes, we don't have that out ball of having that 7-iron to be able to play over a high line or something. That's Pau Torres' job. That's Yuri Tielemans' job. That's going to be the midfielders' jobs, or even the fullbacks' jobs going forward. If we want to play those raking balls, not both your centre halves don't have to be able to do that. But this guy can ping a ball into the 15, 20, 25 yard area, no problem whatsoever. And the statistics bear out on that as well, which is really good. He's also adept at receiving passes, so he can play that possession-based football, which is great to see. So, what's the likelihood of this transfer? I'd give this transfer at best 50%, 40%, something along those lines. But if we were to sign Federico Gatti, your strengths you'd be getting with him would be his defensive ability, his positioning ability, and his passing range. I should have put in passing range up to a point, because he doesn't like to go along with the ball, or he wasn't tasked with going along with the ball either. His weaknesses are that he's not bad in the air, but he does not like to engage in the air. Certainly does not like to engage in the air. And I forgot to put in here as well, his recovery pace is noticeably slower than somebody like a Kanza or a Mings, but his positioning is really good, that he gets back, or he's in positions not to have to rely on that recovery pace. Again, didn't really see him in a massive high line as such, and Juventus were a ball dominant team, so he didn't look like he's been caught out that much, if that makes sense. But maybe it was just the games I saw. Maybe it was a systemic or a tactical point of view, but that recovery pace. And to be honest with you, not all defenders, as I've said before, are Mickey van de Ven. Not all defenders are in Ezri Konsa. A lot of defenders will, like when we say he's got average recovery pace, that's average. That's like he's the same recovery pace as most centre halves. So take that as a negative if you want. I'm just saying it's not a positive or a strength of his. And it's something that you can, that he's positional ability, and I suppose that you can tactic out of his game, if that makes sense. So once again, just going on here to the last slide that I have, so his defensive ability 80%. I don't see many weaknesses in his game. He's that tough Italian defender. His passing ability I put in here at 75. It's just really good in that short to intermediate level as well. It's fantastic. System fit, I think he will be a good system fit. I think you bring him in as a centre half. I think we could see Ezri Konsa right back more during the course of the year. I know people won't like that. We personally here at the podcast don't like that, but I still do think that Unai Emery is searching for a solution at right back, and potentially Ezri Konsa may not be maybe the person who wants to play there. I don't know. Also, this transfer link could be an absolute load of nonsense as well. So take that what it is. Talking about it at face value, that would be somewhere that he would fit in, would be as a centre half. He would also fit in really well as a right-sided centre half in a back three, which is something to bear in mind. Or he could play as that central centre half in a back three as well, which is something to bear in mind also. Transfer probability I've put there at 50%. That's at a massively high estimate there at 50%. I don't know if there's any truth in this at all. But should he be linked, we will come back and talk, or should he be linked more concretely, we will come back and talk a small bit more about him. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching and for listening to this podcast. Hopefully you like it. Please comment, like, share, and everything like that below. If you're listening on audio podcast, please leave a 5-star review, and also give us a little comment on those as well. It drives the algorithm mad. And if there's anybody that is into transfer stuff and is a big Aston Villa fan and is not aware of the podcast, please, word of mouth can be the best way to spread this podcast. It's the one sure way of getting recommendation that isn't algorithmic based, is the old-fashioned way of word of mouth. So please spread that around. We would absolutely love to have new people come and engage with us here on the podcast as well. So this is the first of many podcasts I'm hoping to put out over the course of the weekend. All of them will be scouting series, and all of them will be some of them will be players who've been linked to. So there's a Jesus Rodriguez coming soon, and some of them, as I say, is that long-awaited second striker with Ollie Watkins podcast that I want to do, where I will highlight a couple of players that I think would be good. Aston Villa would be smart to go and look at a couple of young strikers. So please look out for those over the course of the weekend, and hopefully you enjoy these podcasts. So stay safe, stay healthy, everybody, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.